Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to look at 3 different ficus trees in my collection and talk a little bit about how they're doing right now. So basically giving you a status update of those trees now at the end of growth season. I want to basically showcase what you can expect from a ficus tree by the end of growth season. I will talk a little bit about how I worked on them in the last couple of weeks and months, how I changed the shape, how they're doing right now health-wise, and also what I'm planning for them now that cold season is just around the corner. So I would like to start right away with this Ficus Benjamina, one of the favorite trees in my collection, I must say. The reason is because it is so easy to work on this tree. The foliage comes in nice and dense, it is growing so fast. The trunk and taper is coming along quite nicely. I can always work on it when it comes to wiring and pruning it back. And I did so also this year. So a lot of the wire that I've applied, especially here on those pads, I did apply this year. I also changed the shape. I pruned it back quite considerably, even though now, after only a couple of weeks, it almost is no longer visible. It goes bushy and gets bushy so fast again, and a lot of new growth that comes in, and just this perfect size growth, like those very small glossy leaves that you can see right here, also here on top, for example. So a very healthy tree, a tree I'm very happy with. One thing I still will need to do, and I can see that also at the moment, is remove the wire that is still on the tree here, because it's really starting to bite in at certain areas. So that is something I will do today still. But before that, a little bit also outlook on this tree. So the black wire here will stay on, simply to really get this in position. This is wired quite freshly, so that definitely I will keep on this tree still for a couple of months actually now over cold season. In cold season, what I'm also not going to do is prune back the growth up here. I want the tree to really continue growing basically. I feel like now by the end of growth season, if I prune it back too harshly, it might stunt any growth that would still otherwise show over the cold season, because this one does also grow quite considerably during cold season. And I don't want to stunt that actually, because you can see a lot of little places here where there is new growth still coming in. This is the area that is currently not facing the window, so if I again basically put this in the direction of the window, it will also fill in quite nicely. Here again, that goes quite fast always, so I normally rotate it every 2 to 3 weeks normally, if I remember, and then it looks quite even. So as I mentioned, I will not prune this back, but I do definitely see that this wire needs to be removed. I will try to unfurl it as much as possible. I might have some crossing going on here actually, so we will simply then cut the wire at that point, but normally I do tend to unfurl the wire, so to really try to be able to reuse it again, of course, because this wire is perfectly fine to reuse again, so why not make that a possibility at least. But I can see at certain points it really started to bite a little bit, so before leaving it on for another cold season, if you spot something like that, of course, always take care of that right away. So you can see here now, it is basically crossing with the black wire, so I will simply cut it back. At this point, still not a too small piece of wire, I think that can be reused still. And we do the same thing also from the top here, so simply get in here, and especially here at the top, I feel like it's starting to bite a little bit. We'll look at that in a second to see if we already left some scarring on this tree. However, I had that problem before on that tree, and it grew out those scars quite well again. So I think we will see some markings at the moment. Yes, definitely there are some markings, but not something that cannot be repaired again. Over time, of course. That is something that will still play a factor then, so the time, but that is something I can deal with. Let me also get the wire here, perfect. And remove it. That's always a bit difficult to get out then, of course, when you have crossing wires, which is something you should avoid anyway. But I didn't at this point, and now I have to see how to get this out. This one here might have to actually undo some of the wiring here to not damage the tree by trying to get it out. So I'd rather reapply this wire in a second than risk damaging the tree too much here. So there you go, see, still a little piece that we had to get out. And as I said, we reapply this wire Let me try not to damage too much of this new growth that has formed since I last applied it. So I'm trying not to trap any of it. Just not that easy actually, because there has been so much new growth, which of course is a great sign. So one more time around here, and we position it again down here, making sure this also grows rather down. Here it looks a bit sad with the movement right now, so we move it a little bit out. We applied the wire again, but you can definitely see how the wire is already cut in here. So that is something that probably I would have preferred to take this off already in the middle of growth season. I did not actually look at that too clearly, I must admit, but that is normally something, especially with ficus, which is a quick grower that can easily be taken care of and worked against again. I also had the problem, for example, down here, there's basically no visibility of any scarring any longer, so that will work itself out still, especially with a young tree like this. There is still a lot of potential we have to further work on that. But I would say let's move on to the next tree, because for this one, I think the thing that we wanted to do, taking off the wire, we have done, and I already explained that. For the next couple of months, I will simply let this grow if it grows. Also, maybe the fertilization is still a topic we can talk about. If I see growth, I will keep fertilizing. If I don't see growth, I probably will still keep fertilizing, just considerably less. So maybe once or twice over the entire cold season, because of course, if the tree doesn't grow and you keep fertilizing it, for example, with liquid fertilizer, it stays in the soil. It changes the acidity of the soil, for example. It can damage the roots. So that's something that I want to, of course, avoid with this tree. So let us then move on to also a very interesting tree, albeit a bit, problematic I won't say, but a bit sickly I would say at the moment. Or it has been at least. So you can still see some of these older leaves, they probably will fall off still, because I had a problem with this tree that I think I didn't fertilize it enough and it didn't get all the nutrients that it needed. It definitely showed signs of deficiency, but I think since then it turned itself around health-wise a little bit again. You can see a very good indication for that is all of this new growth that is forming on those leaves right here, while one or the other leaf is still browning at the moment and falling off. But I do think it is on the right way again, because I do see more new growth than growth that is dying. But talking a little bit about this tree, as I said, it has really struggled the last couple of weeks and months. I did shift a little bit on how I take care of this by making sure I care about it basically and really giving it the fertilizer it needs. I have, I think, forgot that once or twice on this tree during growth season. And because the soil it is in is basically just clay pebbles, not the new mixture, still inorganic, that I use nowadays, I think it also didn't hold much of the fertilizer in there, so it washed out quite fast. And that is one of the reasons that this tree has been struggling a little bit. So what my plan is for come spring is definitely to give this a repot. I think it deserves better soil than this one. It is not the worst. I would say it already spent a winter in here, and it has been doing quite well that winter, because it is, as I said, still inorganic soil, so there's basically no risk of being sitting in too wet soil for too long, which is rather a problem I have when it comes to my trees in winter, that I had usually in organic soil. But since I switched to inorganic soil, that normally is not a problem on my trees. However, as I said, it is probably still not the best mixture, because it is simply this uniform clay pebbles and not any volcanic rock, lava rock or anything like that in there. So I will repot this, but again, now of course simply make sure that the health is setting at a level where I'm happy with, which I think it's on a good way, but still observing this one quite closely, I would say, in the next couple of weeks and months. If there is new growth, if the growth that has formed is coming in healthily, and simply making sure that if this was a nutrient deficiency, to keep an eye on it. If it is some pest, also to get rid of them as fast as possible. However, don't see any real signs of pests on this tree. I might preemptively wash it down with a soap water mixture once or twice in winter. That normally always helps my trees also to go through the cold season without any pests. So we'll definitely do that as well. What I will probably also do is clean a little bit of the hard water that is forming then here basically on the bottom of the stem, to clean that a little bit off. That is normally something that comes off with a toothbrush, for example, quite easily anyway in a bit of warm water, so I'm not too worried about that, but of course it just makes the tree look nicer again when this little white stuff is simply removed from the tree. But other than that, yeah, as I said, it's a tree that is a bit on the brink of being sickly, but I think it is turning itself around at the moment. But of course, if there's some major change on this tree, I will keep you updated anyway. And that already brings me to the last tree for today, which is a Ficus Benjamina, something I have created only this spring or end of winter, I would say. And the goal for this is, as you probably can see anyway on the wiring around here, is to create a clump style bonsai. So this is actually 3 separate trees in here that I have wired together here and also locked in, of course, then with wire into the pot. The goal is to let this grow, to let the trunk grow as thick as possible, to up to a point where they actually start to fuse together. So we create one tree out of those 3 trees. And once we then remove the wire, it should also really stick together. So it shouldn't only look like one tree, it should really fuse into one tree. That is the goal with this. But for that, of course, what we do need is a lot of growth. I have this summer, middle of summer, I would say, have pruned it back once simply because it was crazily bushy. And probably when we look at it right now, you still would say this tree is very, very bushy. And it is, but it was even worse than that. And I have pruned it back. I thought it's a first initial prune to simply see what branch structure we have in here. I mean, for example, this branch here I'm quite happy with. The middle one is not as developed yet as we will need it in the future, and also the side branch here. When it comes to the secondary or tertiary branches, definitely still a work in progress as well. But I simply wanted to get an insight into the development of this tree and prune it, of course, also a little bit back, make sure that the foliage comes in quite nice and densely. And we have achieved that back in the day. You could probably argue for another prune now before cold season. But as I said, my initial goal for this tree is first of all and foremost to get it to fuse together. And for that, I simply let it grow now as wild as possible and make sure it has all the energy that it needs to grow thick and strong and to fuse together. And then when that has happened, we will definitely also focus on the branches and on the foliage on the tree, making it look like a nice clump style bonsai. But I'm quite happy with the new growth, especially on this little side branch. I would definitely say this is the tree that I'm the happiest with because the foliage comes in nice and densely. There's a lot of new growth. The one in the middle is a bit laggy. I mean, this is actually coming from the same pot. It was just 3 separate trees in one pot together from a garden center, but they do still develop slightly differently. This one here is slightly bigger leaves, I would say, than on this side. So I will simply keep an eye on this, of course, as well, if something goes extremely laggy and gets completely out of hand. And then I would probably step in and prune that back. But for now, it seems the growth is nicely spread over the entire tree, so I'm happy with that. And I will simply let this really double, maybe even in size, and then see how we can go from there. I don't see that we will need to repot it next season, definitely not, probably not even in the season after that. But for now, focus, as I said, is just on growing healthily and strong. It seems to have enough space in this pot, which I'm happy with. And now let's just let it grow, fertilize it. Even though this soil mixture has some fertilizer pebbles anyway in there, so I don't have to use liquid fertilizer for at least another year on this one. But I will simply keep an eye on the growth also over our cold season. Pests normally on my Ficus Benjamina is not a problem, but again, as I said, of course, in cold season or when cold season starts, always keep an eye on your tree when it comes to pests or any other changes you notice on your tree that are maybe out of the ordinary. And this way I hope I can bring this nicely through cold season and then hope for a lot of growth again next spring and summer. But again, keep you updated on this one. As I said, for the video today, just a little update on 3 of my ficus trees. That's definitely 3 different trees, I would say, also the way they look and in which stage they are right now. But I hope it's interesting for you to see simply 3 trees from the same genus that nevertheless are in completely different stages. So hope that was insightful for you today. If it was so, of course, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video then. Until then, take care.